Klaus, are you seriously asking if we just tried to insult your entire engineering department? I asked, watching the German executives on the video call go stone-faced. Across the conference table, Brianna Cross, our new VP of Sales who got her MBA before she learned how real business works, just shrugged and said, I thought calling their process unnecessarily rigid was constructive feedback. I wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. That was a Tuesday in what would become the worst and best week of my career. By Thursday, I'd been locked out of my own client meetings. By Friday, my 15-year relationship with our biggest client was hanging by a thread. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. The name's Wesley Martinez, by the way. I'm 48 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years of my life building relationships with international clients while watching upper management take credit for keeping disasters from happening. I'm the guy they call when someone needs to understand why you don't schedule business meetings during Oktoberfest, or why German engineers take precision seriously enough to walk away from $25 million deals over perceived disrespect. Let me back up and tell you how I got to that disaster of a Tuesday. I've been at Sterling & Associates for 15 years now. That's 15 years of late-night calls with Frankfurt, 15 years of catching cultural landmines before they exploded in our faces, 15 years of watching people half my age get promoted while I kept the German automotive contract from falling apart every single quarter. We're talking about $25 million here. That's million with a big fat M, not exactly the kind of money you want to mess around with. Now, I don't have a corner office with a view of Lake Michigan. I don't get my own parking spot or a secretary who brings me coffee. I get a desk by the copy machine and a phone that cuts out every time someone uses the microwave in the break room. They call me the international specialist, like I'm some kind of fancy translation app, instead of the guy who's been Klaus Weber's go-to contact since before anyone had heard of smartphones. Klaus and I, we've done business the old-fashioned way. Handshakes that mean something. Bourbon after successful negotiations. Golf games where more gets decided on the back nine than in most boardrooms. That's how real deals get done, at least in my experience. You build trust first, then you build business. These young hotshots today think everything can be solved with PowerPoint presentations and buzzwords they learned in business school. Which brings me to Brianna Cross. She showed up at Sterling 6 months ago, fresh from Wharton with Daddy's recommendation letter and a head full of disruptive strategies and agile methodologies. You know the type. Everything's about synergy and optimization and leveraging core competencies. Makes my teeth hurt just thinking about it. First day on the job, she walked right up to my desk and asked if I was the culture guy. Not senior international business specialist, which is what my business cards say. Not the man who'd personally saved 3 major deals in the last year when some hotshot almost torpedoed them with cultural insensitivity. The culture guy. Like I'm some kind of diversity trainer instead of the person who actually knows how to talk to Klaus Weber without making him want to take his business elsewhere. That should have been my first clue that things were about to get interesting. The second clue came when she started showing up to my client calls, just appearing in the conference room like she belonged there, interrupting me mid-sentence with, what Wesley's trying to say is, like I was some old-timer fumbling for the right words. This from someone who once suggested we send Klaus a casual Friday invitation to a formal contract signing ceremony. But here's the thing about Klaus Weber and his team at Bavarian Precision Motors. They're not just any clients, they're the kind of people who built their company on engineering excellence and business relationships that span decades. Klaus and I have been working together since before his company went public. I was there when they expanded into North America. I helped them navigate the regulatory requirements, the cultural differences, the whole complicated dance of doing business across the Atlantic. When Klaus calls, he doesn't ask for Sterling & Associates. He asks for Wesley Martinez. When his legal team has questions about contract language, they email me directly. When there's a problem that needs solving, I'm the first person they contact. That's not an accident. That's 15 years of proving that when Wesley Martinez gives you his word, you can take it to the bank. Now, I should have seen what was coming. Brianna didn't like that Klaus and his team always asked for me specifically. She didn't like that I had a direct relationship with the client that bypassed her authority. Most of all, she didn't like that I represented everything she was trying to change about how Sterling did business. To her way of thinking, I was old school, set in my ways, resistant to innovation. She smiled through her teeth in meetings, made all the right noises about collaboration and teamwork. But in the break room, when she thought I wasn't listening, I heard her telling her crew that I was a little too attached to the German account. That maybe it was time to modernize the relationship and bring some fresh energy to the client management process. To Brianna and her fresh-faced team, I wasn't an asset. I was dead weight. Yesterday's news. A relic from the old days when business was about relationships instead of metrics and KPIs and whatever other buzzwords they taught in business school these days. I laughed it off at first, I'll admit it. I've dealt with worse than ambitious kids in expensive suits who think they know better than everyone else. But something was shifting in the office dynamics, and I could feel it happening even if I couldn't quite put my finger on what was wrong. Suddenly, I wasn't getting invited to strategy sessions anymore. You know how it starts. First, it's just one meeting where they forget to send you the calendar invite. Then it's another one where they say it was last minute and they didn't want to bother you. Before you know it, you're completely out of the loop on decisions affecting your own accounts. Presentations I'd written were being delivered with my name mysteriously absent from the slides. When I asked to be included in the planning sessions, I got the usual corporate speak from Brianna and her team. It's above your level, Wesley. We'll update you later. It's mostly numbers anyway. You wouldn't find it interesting. The classic brush-off techniques they probably teach in management training. Later never came, of course. What did come were confused calls from Klaus asking why the tone of our communications had changed so dramatically. Wesley, he'd say in that precise German way of his, why are these people treating us like we work at a car wash instead of a precision manufacturing facility? What happened to the respect and protocol we've always maintained? That's when I knew we had a real problem. Klaus Weber doesn't complain lightly. When a German engineer tells you something isn't working, you better listen, because they've already tried to fix it 3 different ways before they'll even mention it to you. These people build machines that run for 50 years without needing repairs. They don't tolerate sloppy thinking or amateur hour approaches to business relationships. So I kept doing what I always did. I smoothed things over, fixed the broken pieces in the background, maintained the relationship that kept the lights on at Sterling & Associates. Every time Brianna's team stepped on a cultural landmine, I'd get on the phone with Klaus and explain that we were going through some internal transitions. He'd listen politely, ask a few pointed questions, and then say something like, "Please ensure this does not happen again, Wesley. Our patience has limits." But I could feel it happening anyway. That slow squeeze when you're being phased out of your own job. The air changes in a room when people stop consulting you and start tolerating you. Conversations that used to include you suddenly happen in closed offices with doors that stay shut. Email chains that you used to be copied on somehow forget to include your address. The breaking point came on a Monday morning when I discovered my calendar access had been restricted. I'm sitting at my desk, trying to check what meetings I had coming up, and the system tells me I don't have permission to view certain calendar items. Turns out Brianna had locked me out of the renewal preparation meetings, the same meetings I'd been running for the past 5 years. The same meetings where Klaus's team would specifically ask, "Is Wesley joining today?" Followed by awkward shuffling from whoever they'd thrown in to replace me. Her replacement for me was her little sister, Chloe. Yeah, you heard that right. Chloe Cross, 25 years old with a business degree from some state school and about as much international experience as my neighbor's golden retriever. This kid thought business protocol meant sending emails with smiley face emojis and ending phone calls with, "Let's circle back and touch base soon." I'm not making this up. I found out I'd been excluded from the most critical strategy meeting of the quarter from Melody Parker in HR. Melody's one of those people who knows everything that happens in the office before it happens, and she's got a soft spot for the underdogs. She walked past my desk Wednesday evening while I was staying late to catch up on some translation work and said, "They're still arguing upstairs about the German proposal. Your name came up a lot, but not in a good way." I wasn't invited to anything that night. Apparently, they were restructuring the entire $25 million relationship without consulting the one person who actually understood how it worked. It was like watching someone try to perform surgery with a hammer. You know it's going to end badly, but you can't stop it from happening. That week, Klaus emailed me directly, not through the usual channels, not copying the rest of the team. Just a simple professional message that made my blood run cold. "Wesley, could you explain this new agile partnership framework your colleagues presented to us yesterday? We are deeply confused by the aggressive tone and unfamiliar terminology. This does not align with our 15-year working relationship. Confused was Klaus speak for deeply offended. These were people who'd built their company on precision, respect, and long-term thinking. Brianna's team was treating them like some startup looking for venture capital instead of an established manufacturing company with standards that went back generations. I took it upstairs to Brianna's office. She was sitting behind this massive desk that used to belong to someone who actually knew what they were doing, surrounded by charts and graphs and all the usual business school props. I knocked, waited for her to look up from whatever she was pretending to read, and said, "We need to talk about the German account." Her response? She actually laughed. "Don't worry about it, Wesley. We've got the young guns handling strategy now. Time to let the next generation take over. You've done your part, but business is evolving. Klaus needs to understand that we're not running a country club here." Then she patted my shoulder like I was her grandfather after a little league game. That's when I knew for certain that this wasn't about reorganization or efficiency or any of the corporate buzzwords they were throwing around. This was about putting me out to pasture, and they didn't care if they burned down 15 years of relationship building to do it. Walking back to my desk, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger exactly. Not even frustration. It was more like clarity. The kind of clarity you get when you finally understand that the game has changed and you have two choices: adapt or get left behind. That night, I did something I'd never thought I'd do in 15 years at Sterling & Associates. I opened a personal folder on my laptop at home and titled it Exit Strategy, not because I wanted to leave, but because I was finally starting to understand that leaving might not be up to me, and if I was going out, I wasn't going quietly. Inside that folder, I started building my case. Every email where I'd been excluded from key decisions, every instance of Brianna's team stepping on cultural landmines that I'd had to clean up, every time Klaus had specifically asked for me and been told I wasn't available when I was sitting right there at my desk. I wasn't planning a lawsuit or anything dramatic like that. I was just documenting the truth because I had a feeling the truth was about to become very important. Then I did something that surprised even me. I sent Klaus a quiet message through LinkedIn, disguised as a casual check-in about some technical specifications. At the end, almost like an afterthought, I added, "By the way, if circumstances ever changed and I were to go independent, would there be any interest in continuing our working relationship outside the current framework?" He replied within an hour, "Wesley, if you ever became available independently, we would consider it a significant opportunity for both parties." I read that message 5 times. Then I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, the good stuff I usually saved for celebrating successful deals, and started planning for what was beginning to feel like the inevitable. That weekend, I did something I never thought I'd do in my 15 years at Sterling. I registered a limited liability company, Martinez International Consulting. It sounded professional enough to be taken seriously by people like Klaus, but vague enough that it wouldn't raise red flags if someone at Sterling happened to stumble across it in a Google search. The whole process took me about 3 hours on Saturday morning. Filed the paperwork online, paid the $275 registration fee, set up a business bank account at my local branch. The banker who helped me, nice lady named Susan, asked what kind of consulting I'd be doing. International business relationships, I told her, helping companies navigate cultural differences in global markets. She nodded like that made perfect sense and handed me my temporary checks. I wasn't jumping ship yet, not even close. But I wanted a parachute, and now I had one. Martinez International Consulting existed, legally and officially, waiting in the wings for if and when I needed it. And the way things were going at Sterling, that day was looking more inevitable by the hour. Over the next few days, I tightened up my documentation. Every call I was excluded from, I noted the time, date, and attendees. Every instance where Klaus specifically requested my involvement and was redirected to Chloe instead, I logged with screenshots of the emails. I saved audio files when I could, printed out email chains, and filed everything at home in a folder that was starting to look like a legal brief. My work computer stayed completely clean. I wasn't stupid enough to leave evidence of my planning where corporate IT could find it, but my personal laptop at home was becoming Fort Knox with a business plan attached, and the only person who knew what I was building was me and the barista at the corner coffee shop who'd started noticing my caffeine-fueled research into business law and contract requirements. "New venture?" he asked one morning, sliding me my 3rd espresso of the day while glancing at my open browser tabs. "Maybe," I said, closing the laptop. Or just preparing for weather. And I was preparing for weather because the storm clouds were gathering fast. I could feel it in every meeting I wasn't invited to, in every silence that followed when someone mentioned my name, in the way conversations stopped when I walked into a room. They thought I'd go quietly, that I'd fade into the background and take my notes and my relationships and my 15 years of experience with me. What they didn't realize was that the bridge they were so eager to burn was the only thing holding up their biggest deal. The breaking point came on a Thursday. I was at my desk, catching up on some routine correspondence with Klaus's engineering team about technical specifications for next quarter's production schedule, when Melody from HR walked by and dropped a bombshell in her usual casual way. "You know they're bringing in an external consultant to review the German account strategy, right?" she said, not even slowing down. "Some hotshot from Boston who supposedly specializes in European market penetration. Brianna's college roommate, I think." I felt my stomach drop. An external consultant meant they were serious about cutting me out completely. It also meant they were willing to spend serious money to avoid admitting they needed me. This wasn't reorganization anymore. This was replacement. That afternoon, I got the confirmation I was dreading. Klaus called me directly, bypassing the usual channels, his voice carrying that tone of controlled frustration I'd learned to recognize over the years. "Wesley, we received a most unusual communication today," he said. "A woman named Jennifer Bradley contacted our legal department claiming to represent Sterling's new strategic direction for our account. She informed us that you would be transitioning to a reduced role and that she would be our primary contact going forward. We are deeply concerned by this development." Jennifer Bradley, Brianna's college roommate, a consultant who'd probably never set foot in a manufacturing facility, didn't speak a word of German, and thought BMW stood for big money wheels or something equally ridiculous. They were replacing 15 years of relationship building with someone who'd gotten the job because she knew the right person at the right business school. "Klaus," I said, choosing my words carefully, "I want you to know that this decision was made without my input or approval. I disagree with it completely, but I'm not in a position to override it at this time." There was a long pause. Then Klaus said something that changed everything. "Wesley, we have built our North American expansion on trust and competence. If Sterling no longer values these principles, perhaps it is time to reconsider our arrangements." That was as close as Klaus Weber ever came to issuing an ultimatum. In diplomatic German speak, he'd just told me that Bavarian Precision Motors was prepared to walk away from Sterling and Associates if they couldn't work with people they trusted and respected. I made a decision right there on the spot. "Klaus, I'm going to be very direct with you because I respect you too much to play corporate games. I believe Sterling is making a serious mistake. If circumstances change and you need someone who understands your business and values your partnership approach, you know how to reach me." "Indeed we do," he said. "Thank you for your honesty, Wesley. It has always been appreciated." After I hung up, I sat at my desk for about 10 minutes, staring at the phone and thinking about what had just happened. Klaus hadn't said it directly, but the message was clear. If I left Sterling, Bavarian Precision Motors would follow me out the door. That $25 million contract wasn't tied to Sterling and Associates. It was tied to me. That evening, I updated my LLC registration with a proper business address and phone number. I designed a simple website with my contact information and a professional summary of my experience. Nothing fancy, just enough to establish that Martinez International Consulting was a real business with a real track record. I even ordered business cards, though I wasn't quite ready to start handing them out yet. But I was getting close. The way Brianna was moving, it wouldn't be long before she made her final play. She'd probably wait until the renewal negotiations were finished, when she thought she had Klaus locked into another 3-year contract. Then she'd find some excuse to push me out, claim it was part of a larger reorganization, maybe even offer me a severance package to keep things quiet. What she didn't know was that Klaus Weber didn't sign contracts with companies. He signed them with people he trusted. And after 15 years, I was pretty sure I knew who he trusted more, me or some consultant from Boston who thought she could learn his business from a PowerPoint presentation. The conference room was set up for battle, though I don't think anyone realized it except me. Friday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, the biggest meeting of the quarter. Contract renewal time for Bavarian Precision Motors. $25 million on the table. 3 years of guaranteed business if everything went smoothly. The room was freezing, like always. I wore my best Navy suit, the one that made me feel like I still belonged in rooms where million-dollar decisions got made. Though based on where Brianna had seated me, I was starting to wonder if I belonged there at all. "Wesley, you can sit over there," she said, waving toward a chair behind the main table like I was an intern waiting to fetch coffee. "Just stay quiet unless we need cultural input." Cultural input. 15 years of expertise reduced to cultural input. I sat where she told me to sit and watched her arrange her team around the conference table like pieces on a chessboard. Chloe had a stack of notes that looked like they'd been copied from Wikipedia. Jennifer Bradley, the consultant from Boston, had a leather portfolio and the kind of confident smile that told me she'd never failed at anything important in her life. Klaus and his team were dialed in from Frankfurt, looking as serious as German executives always do when there's real money at stake. 3 guys in identical dark suits, sitting in what I recognized as their main conference room, with Klaus front and center, looking like a man who was about to invest in either the future or a very expensive mistake. This was it. Renewal day. All my work, all my relationships, all those midnight phone calls and emergency interventions, now filtered through a presentation that Brianna barely understood and delivered by people who thought business was about disruption instead of building lasting partnerships. I sat in my exile chair, quiet as instructed, and watched them prepare to destroy everything I'd built. The presentation was a train wreck from the opening slide. Jennifer Bradley, Brianna's consultant friend from Boston, led off with something she called strategic market penetration through agile partnership frameworks. I watched Klaus's face go completely neutral, which in German business culture is the equivalent of watching someone's hair catch fire. Chloe stumbled through slides that completely ignored the cultural protocols Klaus's company had valued for decades. She mispronounced 3 German words in the first 5 minutes and referred to their cute attention to detail. I caught at least 4 outright factual errors, including one section that basically told them their 150-year-old company needed to embrace 21st century thinking. I sat there in my exile chair watching 15 years of relationship building get destroyed in real time. Klaus and his team weren't just polite anymore, they were stone-faced, which for Germans meant they were about 30 seconds away from ending the call and never speaking to Sterling again. Then came the moment that sealed everyone's fate. Jennifer Bradley brought up the penalty provision. The same clause Klaus and I had spent 6 months negotiating out of the contract 2 years ago because it was fundamentally insulting to German business culture. She'd put it back in, bigger and bolder than ever, calling it mutual accountability metrics for optimal performance outcomes. Klaus spoke up, his voice carrying that dangerous kind of calm that meant somebody was about to get educated. "Ms. Bradley, we are quite surprised to see Provision 7.3 return to this contract. We understood this language was permanently removed after extensive discussions with Mr. Martinez." Brianna actually laughed. I'm not exaggerating here. She laughed like Klaus had just told a joke. "Oh, that must have been a miscommunication, Klaus. Wesley sometimes overpromises to keep clients happy, but we've streamlined our approach now. This provision is industry standard. That's when I knew it was over, not just for the contract, but for everything." You don't tell Klaus Weber that his concerns are miscommunications. You don't laugh at a German engineer who's trying to explain why something won't work, and you definitely don't dismiss 15 years of carefully built trust as overpromising. I opened my mouth to try to save the situation. Actually, that clause has specific cultural implications that... Wesley. Brianna cut me off, turning toward me with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "This isn't your show anymore. You're here for cultural input if we need it, not to contradict our strategic direction." The silence that followed had weight to it. Real weight. On screen, Klaus raised an eyebrow and leaned back in his chair. His legal team exchanged glances. I could see the exact moment they realized that something fundamental had changed at Sterling, and not for the better. So I made a decision that surprised everyone in the room, including me. I stood up, calmly, deliberately, and I switched to German. "Klaus," I said in his native language, formal but respectful, "I need to clarify something important for the record. As of this moment, I no longer represent Sterling's position on this contract or any other matter. If you and your team would like to continue our 15-year working relationship with proper cultural understanding and mutual respect, I am available for independent consultation through Martinez International Consulting, My rate is 20% of contract value. I am available immediately. The room went dead quiet. Brianna blinked like I'd just started speaking in ancient Aramaic. Chloe's mouth actually fell open. Jennifer Bradley looked confused, like she couldn't figure out why someone was speaking a foreign language in an American business meeting. Klaus responded immediately, also in German. "Mr. Martinez, are you no longer employed by Sterling & Associates?" I looked straight at Brianna and said in English, "That's an excellent question. Am I, Brianna?" And then she did it. The kid actually did it. She looked at me, red-faced and furious, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You're fired, Wesley, effective immediately." She said it in English, in front of our biggest client, like she thought it made her look powerful and decisive. What it made her was finished, though she didn't know it yet. The reaction was immediate. On screen, Klaus's entire team exchanged glances. One of his advisors leaned over and whispered something I caught clearly because my German is actually fluent, unlike some people in the room. "Sie haben ihren besten Mann gefeuert." They just fired their best man. I gathered my things slowly, methodically. My notebook, my pen, the coffee mug I'd brought from home. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. This was exactly what I'd been preparing for, and everything was going according to plan. "Gentlemen," I said to the screen in German, giving a slight bow of respect, "thank you for 15 years of excellent partnership. You have my contact information. I look forward to hearing from you." Then, turning back to Brianna, I said quietly, "You just made the most expensive mistake of your career. I hope it was worth it." I walked out of that conference room with my head high and my phone already buzzing. By the time I reached the elevator, I had a text from Klaus. "Can we schedule a call this afternoon to discuss transition arrangements?" By 5 p.m. that day, I had a signed retainer agreement worth more than my annual salary at Sterling. By the end of the week, Klaus's legal team had sent a formal letter requesting that all future communications regarding their account be directed exclusively through Martinez International Consulting. The fallout at Sterling was immediate and spectacular. Kenneth Sterling himself, the company founder who hadn't been involved in day-to-day operations for years, suddenly materialized like an angry ghost, demanding to know how they'd managed to lose their biggest client in a single meeting. Melody from HR called me that weekend, barely able to contain her glee. "Brianna's telling everyone this was part of a strategic transition plan," she said. "But Kenneth's brought in lawyers because nobody can explain how you weren't bound by any non-compete agreements for this specific contract. Turns out when Sterling restructured last year, somebody forgot to update my contractual obligations. Legally, I was free and clear to compete directly with my former employer. Classic corporate oversight, convenient for me, devastating for them. Within 6 months, I wasn't just Klaus's consultant, I was handling contracts for 3 other German companies who'd heard about what happened at Sterling. Word travels fast in manufacturing circles, especially when it involves a company firing the one person who actually understood how to do business with European clients. A year later, Kenneth Sterling invited me to lunch. Not a business meeting, not a conference room, lunch. Just 2 professionals who understood how business actually worked. "Wesley," he said over bourbon and steaks, "I've been looking at the numbers. You've essentially become our European division without being our European division. What would it take to bring you back? Not as an employee, as a partner." I named my price. He didn't even try to negotiate. These days, when Klaus and I talk business, it's from my corner, office overlooking the city. We still shake hands on deals. We still share bourbon when he's in town for meetings. The only difference is now I own the relationships instead of just managing them. As for Brianna, last I heard she was selling insurance in Phoenix. Turns out firing the person who actually knows how to do the job has consequences. Who would have thought? Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's getting everything.